There is a quite mistake that so many foreign investors make when they buy their first property in Brazil on their own. It does not show up at the moment of choosing a property nor when you sign the contract. It shows up later when the keys are in your hand, the bills start arriving, and you suddenly realize you cannot pay any of them. By the end of this video, you will know exactly what that mistake is and why it happens so frequently to international investors and how to avoid it before it costs you time, money, and control over your own asset. One of the most common questions we get from international investors is this: do I really need a Brazilian bank account to invest in real estate in Brazil? In theory, the answer is no, but in practice, after going through this process myself as an international investor, we can say the answer is a clear yes. And the account type we are talking about is very specific. It is called a non-resident account, in Portuguese, Conta de Não Residente. It is designed for foreigners like you and I who want to invest in Brazil smoothly without becoming a tax resident. Stay with me because what comes next is the part most people learn the hard way. Before we go any further, there is one thing you need to know. To open a non-resident bank account in Brazil, you first need a CPF. The CPF, short for Cadastro de Pessoas Físicas, is the Brazilian Individual Tax ID number. Think of like the Brazilian version of the Social Security number in the US. 11 digits issued by the Brazilian Federal Revenue Service. And here is the part that surprises most foreigners. Having a CPF on its own does not make you a tax resident in Brazil. Let me say that again, because the single most common fear I hear from Americans and European investors, having a CPF does not trigger taxation on your worldwide income. It is simply your ID key for operating inside the country. You needed to open a bank account, to buy property, to collect rent, and to pay utilities. You even needed to get a mobile phone plan. So the CPF is step one. The bank account comes right after step two. Okay, let us get to the key point. When you invest in property in Brazil as a foreign investor, you will quickly discover that developers fall into two very different categories, and which category your developers belongs to will completely change how your transaction works. The first group is what I call the A-tier developers. These are the larger, more established players who already understand how international transactions work. They know what a SWIFT wire transfer is, they have built it into their internal procedures. And they can guide you through the documentation required by the Central Bank of Brazil. The key word here is procedures. Even when a developer accepts SWIFT payments, it has to be part of how the company is set up to receive international payments. Most developers in Brazil simply do not have international wire transfers built into their procedures. And why this matters so much? Because the second group of developers is much larger than most foreigners assume. We are talking about over 90% of developers in Brazil. The best of these, in the second group, I call them the local market champions. And these are companies that, despite being solid and sometimes very large, they have built their entire business around the domestic Brazilian buyer. I have spoken with many of them across the country, and when I ask what percentage of their buyers are international, the answer is always the same. 95% Brazilian, 5% international, sometimes even 99 to 1. Sometimes zero international buyers at all, zero. Now think about what that means. On one hand, it means that the Brazilian real estate market is extremely solid. It does not need to depend on foreign capital to keep growing the way a market like Dubai does, for instance. The domestic demand is strong enough on its own. That is actually a sign of a healthy, mature and self-sustaining market, and it is one of the reasons Brazil is so attractive to international investors in the first place. But on the other hand, it means that even serious, well-known developers are completely unfamiliar with SWIFT payments and international buyers. They like the idea of attracting foreign capital, but occasionally they are not set up for it. And here it is where it gets interesting. Very often the best opportunities, the best projects with the most upside are not with the biggest, most famous developers. They are actually with the local market champions who work mostly with traditional Brazilian buyers. And which means that if you cannot speak their financial language, you're locked out of the best deals on the market. And speaking of language, there is something else you need to understand about doing business in Brazil. According to the British Council, only 1% of the Brazilian population speaks English fluently. 1%. And 5% approximately speak some level of English at all. And inside the real estate industry, these numbers are not much better. I mean, most developers, most contractors, most property managers, most bank officers at the branch level, they all communicate in Portuguese. So entering this market without the right strategic guidance is like a bit trying to read a map in a language you do not speak. You can technically do it, but the chances of misreading something important are very high. And of course, in real estate, misreading something important can be very expensive. So how do Brazilian buyers pay? Two ways. They pay either through PIX, which is the instant local payment system, similar to Zelle in the US, I would say, but used for almost everything, or through Boleto. Boleto is a payment slip issued by the seller with a barcode and a due date that the buyer pays directly through their Brazilian bank or banking app. It is the standard way Brazilians pay almost for everything from property installments to phone bills. So if you do not have a local bank account, you simply cannot pay a boleto, period. So here is the good news. Opening a non-resident account in Brazil is not as complicated as it sounds. I struggled myself at the beginning. I kept asking, how do I open one? What documents do I need? Which bank is the best to choose? I wasted days and I then found the right way, and I was able to open mine remotely, and it is absolutely doable. So especially with the new regulation that came into effect in 2025, which simplified the process for non-residents significantly. Now it is a part of our consulting service package that we include direct support to open a Brazilian non-resident bank account. So our clients can skip the trial and error process I went through at the beginning. And by the way, if you want to see exactly how this works in real life, I just published a video where I walk you through buying real estate off plan in Brazil step by step using my non-resident bank account. Tap the card on the bottom right corner now to watch it. Now let us get back to the original question because there is a twist that most people miss. Imagine you are an international investor and you want to acquire your first apartment in Brazil. So if your developer is one of the 8-tier ones whose procedures accept SWIFT, you can absolutely complete that purchase using a SWIFT wire transfer. I did exactly that with my very first property here. So the transaction itself can work quite smoothly. So far, so good, right? The challenge starts the day after the keys are handed over. Watch what happens. Once the apartment is delivered, you will need to pay the condominium fees, which are known in the US as the HOA fees. So every single month, you will need to pay the IPTU, which is the local property tax. You will pay the electricity bill, the internet, and so on and so forth. If it is an off-plan unit, you will need someone to renovate it, to install the floors and the furniture, to decorate. None of these people are gonna wait for a SWIFT wire transfer from abroad. The contractor putting the tiles in your bathroom is not going to send you the international banking instructions. The utility company will not accept a wire transfer from New York or London or Lisbon. Every single one of these payments is made the Brazilian way, through PIX or through Boleto from a local account. And SWIFT wire transfers are very expensive. Even a single transfer carries fees on both ends, plus a currency spread, and doing dozens of small SWIFT transfers just to pay your bills in Brazil is simply not viable. You will most likely burn money on the fees alone. Then comes the next phase, and this is where most investors get caught off guard. the property starts producing income. And now I want to be crystal clear with you. Short-term rental is not always the best strategy. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not, depending on the city, depending on the building, depending on the location, the type of asset, and of course depending on your specific goals as an investor. There are many cases where long-term rental gives you a more stable, more predictable, and frankly more peaceful return. And precisely in those cases, having a local non-resident bank account is essential. Why? Because long-term tenants in Brazil pay their monthly rent in one of two ways. So either through PIX or through a recurring automatic transfers to another Brazilian bank account. They both run on the Brazilian banking system, so I can tell you from experience, maybe 1 in 1,000 tenants will agree to send you an international wire transfer every month. So realistically, no one will. So if you do not have a local bank account, you do not get paid. So here's the bottom line. Yes, you can technically acquire a property in Brazil using only SWIFT transfers, but as long as the developer you selected has the procedures in place to receive them. But the moment you actually own the property, the moment you have to operate it, to maintain it, to rent it out, to collect income from it, a non-resident local account stops being optional. It becomes the difference between running your investment with control and clarity and depending on third parties for every single payment. Depending on third parties in a country where you do not speak the language and you do not know the rules, it is exactly how foreign investors lose control of their own asset. Now, if you have made it so far in the video, you already understand something that most international investors learn the hard way. Brazilian real estate is one of the most rewarding markets in the world for foreign capital, but it's also a market where the strategic approach matters as much as the property itself. So the right developer, the right account structure, the right strategic guidance from someone who understands both the international investor's mindset and the Brazilian way of doing business, this is the difference between an investment that works and one that becomes a problem. If you want to explore whether Brazil is the right move for your portfolio and you want to do it with someone who has been on both sides of the table, book a strategic call through the link in the description. We will look at your specific investor goals together and we'll figure out the right path forward. Subscribe for more hands-on international real estate content. I'm Lorenzo and I will see you in the next video.